Hello, and welcome to the Shoot, Reload, Repeat podcast. I am your host, Calvin, aka Practical as Buck, and today I have a very special guest, Mike Stoker. So you might know Mike Stoker on Instagram as Bulletsandbeards. No, if I got that wrong, Mike, can you correct me? Did I
Mhm.
get?
You're
Did I? I'm right. So Mike, actually, I've been following Mike on Instagram for a while. He recently switched divisions. He used to shoot limited, now he shoots single stack. So we're going to talk about that. And Mike also has picked up a few sponsorships, and so we're going to talk about that. So Mike, thanks for being on the show. Why don't you go ahead and talk about a little bit about yourself, when you started shooting, where you're from, things like that.
yeah. Thanks for having me, Calvin. I'm actually born and raised here in Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City. It's super hot and miserable, but it's actually a great place to shoot. I've been shooting my entire life. I was raised in a big family. We're all big time hunters, and I actually didn't get into pistols until I was 21 years old. So handguns were kind of new to me, and from there I became addicted to it. Most of my shooting, we'll say, career has actually been more on defensive pistol. I'm actually a firearms instructor, and I teach concealed carry courses, and I've been doing that for about 9 years now. And it wasn't really until I got introduced into competition. I actually started in three gun about a year and a half ago, and then I realized I enjoyed pistol a lot more, and I wanted to focus. I'm very like ADHD all over the place, so I've been primarily for a year focusing on shooting pistol, and I started in the limited division, and I've kind of, I would say about the last 6 months doing single stack, but that's kind of a brief start on how I got into shooting.
Awesome. So yeah, so when you shot three gun, how many matches, how long did you shoot three gun for?
Well, I had a friend introduce me into it here in the local Las Vegas scene, and I got into it, and I was running a Glock 17 and just a janky rifle and a borrowed shotgun, and I actually did like a major national match. I did a couple. It was only a short stint, maybe 3 or 4 months, and really what happened was, the shotgun and the quad loading, that was interesting to me, but I kind of got so spread out, and with what I do for a living and my training commitment, I really wanted to focus, and pistol was the hardest for me. I grew up shooting shotguns and rifles, and it came a lot easier. And the challenge, I love to be challenged. That's why I shoot single stack. And pistol really, I sucked at it, and it made me really want to focus on that. So I sold my rifles, I sold pretty much all my stuff, and I just focused. And I joined the USPSA July 2018. So that's really when I was like, okay, I got a 2011 that July about a year ago, and I've just been focusing solely on that. Maybe I'll go back to three guns someday, but I'm so addicted to what I'm doing now. I don't know when it'll happen. Everyone's asking me, but I don't really know.
Yeah, I feel like three gun. That's kind of where I got my start with my interest in was three gun because shooting AR-15 and shotgun and pistol. But for me, the cost of just ammunition alone, and then the time commitment to spend on practicing shotgun, pistol, and rifle, that it just it just kind of disinterested me. It's kind of interesting too that you started on the self defense side and you started in USPSA because a lot of people that are in the self defense, they usually start with IDPA, then they jump into USPSA. Have you ever shot IDPA or anything like that?
I actually haven't, and we have IDPA here. We actually have more IDPA than USPSA, surprisingly, here in Las Vegas. And I was on a thread last night. One of my buddies was on there. He does both USPSA and IDPA, and I said, "Hey man, I really want to put on my fishing vest and my khakis and go shoot some IDPA." And he's like, "You're too high speed for that." Most shooters that I know in the competition world, they don't realize that for the past 10 years, it's been defense for me. Concealment and defense training is like my bread and butter, and you get killed in the streets shooting competition was a thing, and that kind of pushed me into USPSA because the scene I ran with and the guys I trained with for so long, most of them don't shoot competition, and we see it on social media, and they laugh at us competitors, but competition, I mean, to me, it's anyone who does that, it will hone your skills as a marksman, no matter what you want to do. And it just made me a lot better. And I really enjoyed pistol. I enjoy the heck out of it. So that's why I do it.
Yeah, I agree. I took a little mini class from this tactical instructor guy, and he kind of had that same opinion. But I think, competition is competition. If you can shoot a gun, you can shoot a gun. It all translates. Shooting is shooting. So I guess the first thing we'll start with, we'll talk about what. So you mentioned you started in limited. So what divisions have you shot? What division are you currently shooting?
Okay, so I actually first started in carry optics, but it only lasted like a month because I kept breaking optics and I got pissed off. And then I went, flexing on pores. I just said, okay, I'm gonna go to limited division.
Yeah, you bought it. I remember you seeing your post on Instagram. You buying that STI, and I was like so jealous.
Yeah, because I started with the Glock 17, and I've been shooting Glocks for at that point almost 10 years. And for me, I'm not a big proponent on upgrading your equipment until you can outperform it. And basically, why I switched to a 2011 so quick is we were shooting a local match, and it was a USPSA match, and I ran a stage in it's like 32 seconds with my Glock, and I had a guy come up to me and he says, "Hey man, I want you to run this stage." And he had the DVC limited. It wasn't Island, it was just limited. And I ran the stage again, and like it was ridiculous. It was like 22. I cut like almost 8-9 seconds, and it just felt right. The Glock angle always felt off for me, so I went and bought one like that night. Because it was like, I don't know, I just impulse buyer, I guess, but I'm glad because for me, it actually made training a lot easier because I was fighting that angle of the Glock grip. And once I got into the 2011, it was like struck a whole new fire of addiction and drive into training. So yeah, I started with the DVC limited Island, and I started with it in a 9mm. I didn't go into major. My first major gun is actually my Atlas gun now.
Wow.
Even when I first switched to single stack, I went into minor, and a lot of that here we have the USSL, which is a different league than USPSA, and there's no power factor difference. It's everything is one, and it's mainly that's where multi-gun, a lot of the UML is through that. So at that time, I was actually on the edge of finishing up before I stopped shooting 3-gun was right then. And so I was like, well, I'm going to get a 9 instead of a 40. So I shot the limited gun for about 8 months into my single stack, and I got the STI Classic in 9mm. It's like 5.4 Ranch, great gun. Shot that, and then I just recently switched over till major. And the main switch was I started seeing the points difference in the beginning. And I would encourage a lot of shooters when you start out, just get something affordable that you can shoot. I could afford those guns, so it wasn't that big of a stress for me. But as far as ammunition and training, a 9mm, I didn't have any problem with it because I just wanted to get the reps in. But it wasn't until I started going to matches and realizing, like, hey, I ran the stages just as fast, but it came down to points based on hits, that I realized, hey, I need to switch to a major. So now I'm shooting the Atlas Titan single stack in 40 cal, and that gun, I shoot that gun faster and flatter than I do any of my 9s. It just, kudos to Atlas Gunworks on the quality that they put into that gun. It's like I dry fire and I live fire quite obsessively, but once I got that gun, I don't put it down. Like, it's hard for me not to go to bed with it.
I'm sure your wife appreciates that.
Definitely, nice.
Yeah, I was shooting limited minor because I just got into it, bought a Glock 17, didn't really know what I wanted to shoot, and that's when I switched to carry optics because I realized that shooting minor and limited is not very competitive, because you could burn down a stage, have the exact same hits, and you're still going to lose because your Charlies and Deltas, they hurt you more. So my dad shoots limited, and I'm trying to get him to switch to either a 40 or change divisions because I think it would really help him, especially like on his classifiers and things like that. But yeah, so why don't you kind of talk about your gear setup? So you mentioned your single stack gun. So why don't you kind of talk about what gear you're using, belt setup, things like that?
Okay. Yeah. With my Atlas, I'm using primarily double alpha. My belt's double alpha. All my carriers are the race pouches, for single stack, and then the holster I'm actually running. I've gone through a lot of different holsters. I'm kind of a holster snob, but right now I'm using the Priority One holster, and they have a great holster. It's pretty much universal. It fits all my 2011s and 1911s, and it's the retention on it is perfect. It's not rubbing the crap out of my gun. It's just right on the trigger guard. It's quick and easily adjustable. I like it. If I was shooting 3-gun, I could use the holster and it would work perfect. But in USPSA, I loosen it up and it's stupid fast. There's no resistance. So it fits within the criteria for the single stack division, but it's as close as like a race style holster as you can get, just the way that they block and did their molding. It's extremely, it's a fast holster. And so I really enjoy that holster, but that's pretty much my gear. I mean, it's simple, I guess, for the belt. And for holsters.
That's good. And so why don't you talk about your Atlas, like your single stack gun? Because I think a lot of people want to hear about that. Because I know Atlas makes great guns. They're all pretty much custom made. So why don't you kind of talk about that?
So I have the Titan. It's the Atlas single stack Titan. I went with all black DLC coating. I'm pretty hard on equipment. I like I said, I use my stuff a lot. It gets touched every single day. I live fire weekly. I shoot a match, at least one match a week. And so I've had the gun about almost 2 months now, and I'm coming up on 10,000 rounds through the gun already.
Wow.
It gets used. I don't play around when I'm obsessed with something. So I wanted the best coating. I went with everything black DLC. Everything is fiber optic sights, K-cam, bushing barrel, Bowman rear sight, fiber optic front. It's got the X-Line Vario trigger, which that's by far my favorite trigger. I've put it in all my other 1911s and 2011s just because the adjustability is insane. And Atlas does a really good job just getting a gun that's out of the box ready. And it should be for the price. There's other manufacturers where you buy and you're still tweaking with them. That gun, I mean, right out of the box, I went and shot a match with it. It's flawless. I've taken a little travel out of the trigger. I asked them to keep it, loose because I do a lot of prep press within my dry fire training, but it took me 2 seconds to adjust it. There's so much adjustment in the trigger, but the gun really is the return to zero on that gun is second to none. It shoots flatter than my limited. I have the DVC Island in 9mm, and I can shoot this gun like I've done my draw and my splits side by side, and I can shoot faster splits flatter with a 40 in this Titan than I can in a 9 Island gun, which is basically sight block. But it all comes down to, and I didn't realize it until Adam, the owner of Atlas Gunworks, I was watching videos and he was talking about, perfect spring weight load comparison, getting it all dialed in, that return to zero. And so I do a lot of video. If I shoot a gun, it's on video. From live fire practice to competition, I video everything. And so I do a lot of analysis, and I was doing a lot of side by side, and I didn't realize in my other guns I did have more muzzle dip, or the return was off and I was self-correcting, where this gun, I mean, you manage recoil, but you let it do its thing and it'll come back to the same spot. There's many occasions where I put them in the same hole, just doing double taps, but it just makes my job easier as a shooter to where I could focus on other things. And, recoil mitigation, it doesn't feel like a 40 when you shoot it, which is very nice.
I've noticed in some of your aim cam videos that, man, when you're shooting, that gun is just flat and it's on target, especially like when you're shooting at distance or when you're shooting like plates and still targets. It's just very, very flat, and that's impressive. So when you made the switch, because you shot limited for not a very long time, when you made that switch to single stack, what was like one of your biggest obstacles? Like, what was the most difficult part about that switch?
So when I first switched, at the time I was shooting the DVC Limited Island, and I wanted to ease into it because I had planned on bouncing back and forth in division. So I got the DVC Classic, and I actually took both guns and I tuned both triggers, exact travel, weight, everything, to where the gun, I mean, it was as close to the same as you can get within the division switch. But the real problem wasn't that. It wasn't the manipulations, the handling, and shooting of the gun. the hardest overcome that I had to do was stage planning. I didn't realize how much of a difference it was. I mean, I had an idea, but me as a competitor, I lean on my athleticism and my efficiency and movement, and that's due to my sports background and my competitive background. I feel like I have an upper hand on it. And when I went to single stack, you pretty much have to reload out of every position. So when the first match I shot, I was so frustrated after every stage because I was overrunning positions, and it became more of a timing issue. And it really has taken me. I'm now 7 months in a single stack, and it wasn't until like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, looking at my performance journal, that I finally feel like I'm in a good sync. I'm in a good rhythm, because limited, I would shoot an array and I could explode and take advantage of my length and speed to get into position. Entries and exits is a big thing for me, where I have an upper hand on competition, but throw a reload in between that, and it affected me. And initially I did try to bounce back and forth, and it ended up not being so good. For both divisions suffered. So that's kind of when I decided. I tried that for like a month, and I wound up frustrated. And so I said, okay, what really do I want to do? And limited wasn't easy by any means, but single stack, the challenge of single stack kind of had me like I hate losing. I absolutely hate it. And I hate sucking. So for me, it just challenged me so much more that I set the limited aside. And I've just primarily since about January, just going like full bore on single stack only, and just really trying to dial in with that system and learn, because I feel single stack, like if you can master that, and I'm getting to the point where I can go to matches and I can give the business to like PCC shooters or open shooters. Nothing makes me warm and fuzzy more than beating a PCC shooter with this.
Yeah.
Like it really, like, I'm not the type to like, boast and rub it in people's faces, but I gauge stuff. I look at overall when I shoot. I don't look at class. I don't believe in our stupid classification system. Sorry. But for me, like in single stack, if I'm not first, I'm not satisfied. And if I am first, which most of the time I am, if I am first, then I'm looking at other divisions and I'm trying to beat most of the limited guys and trying to creep into open guys, which is crazy to think of. But for me to be successful on a national level, that's what it has to be.
Yeah, if you can do that, that's great, man. Like that's what's funny about the PCC, because I feel like every single I feel like every single division is happy when they beat a PCC,
Oh yeah.
And I think that's a great goal, because really, what do you have? 8 rounds in each mag? So you have 9 in the gun essentially at each position.
Yeah, pretty much, unless they do a lot of empty starts, which they do. But yeah, I have 9 rounds, and my accuracy's gone up tremendously because I don't have makeup shots.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that's a great this mindset to have, that a lot of people would just be satisfied with winning single stack, and it's great that you're trying to push to beat those open dudes and those limited guys, because really, if you can do that at a local level, and then you could take that to even higher level at level 2 matches. So when you're training, so I guess we can talk about your dry fire, because I know you dry fire a lot. I see a lot of it on your social media. What kind of things do you work in your dry fire? Obviously reloads, but do you work on movement or transitions, or just kind of, you don't have to give away the trade secrets, but what are just some things that you work on in dry fire?
Oh, I'll tell you everything. I don't have any secrets, because most people aren't going to do the commitment that I do with training. So when people ask me, I tell them, then they think I'm crazy. So we'll just go off that. The way my process works, and a little bit of my background. So I grew up playing competitive basketball since the age I could walk. All my siblings are all collegiate athletes, and growing up, first place is the only thing acceptable. Other than that, it's not acceptable. And that's how I was raised. And literally from the age of 3, 4 years old was 5 hours a day training. In my entire youth, all the way up through high school, I was a competitive fighter, MMA fighter for years, and I would train 6 hours a day. So for the first 20 years of my life, 6 hours of my waking day was competitive training and drive. And it amazes me in the shooting sports, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, and people gripe about, I don't have time for that. But realize that these guys that make GM are the top guys, and they do it so quick. They're just putting in the time, putting in the work. but proper analysis. So the way I go about it, I video everything. I use my aim cam, which is a huge training tool for me. And then I always have a third person videoing. Sometimes I have 3 or 4 cameras, and everyone thinks, oh, this is for social media. You guys don't see 1% of my actual video footage. My computer is stacked with video from the past year that I've been shooting. And I'll shoot a match. I come home and I do just like you would do within any other sport, watching and doing video analysis. And I review what I was doing. My wife will do the same thing. And I pick apart, what I need to work on. But I'm very big on mental management and proper positive imprinting. I'm a big believer in the law of attraction and positive energy, which throws a lot of people off about me. But I truly feel that, and it's always worked in every sport that I've done. So I always note the good things, and I try to reinforce good behavior. And then I look at something I need to prove on, and I take notes. I have a performance journal. Every time I dry fire, I write in my performance journal. Every time I live fire, I write in my performance journal what I worked on, how I felt something about it, because that's the only way to improve is to track, really what you're doing. So it's almost an obsessive thing for me, but what it allows me to do is every weekend I shoot a match. I do my review. I dry fire every morning for at least 5-10 minutes. I do micro and macro dry fire sessions. My micro sessions are a focus on something specific, trigger or sights or disengaging a safety. I mean, very micro, and it's for 5 or 10 minutes. Lately for me, it's been the trigger. And then in the evening, I'll do my macro dry fire sessions. And that's when you include, draws to reloads or movement. Most of my social only sees, drawing and reloading because I can't have a camera chasing me around. But really 90% of my dry fire more encompasses positioning and body movement, exploding out of position, drawing while moving, entries and exits, because that's what wins matches. Mm-hmm. I did a post yesterday about, the classifier system, and I don't practice that. Well, I practice draws and reloads and such, but really I look at my video footage and I see how could I save time in this match, and how could I analyze that proper body mechanics and movement, and I work on that most of the time in my dry fire. So typically 5-10 minutes in the morning. Usually it's about 2:30 in the morning before I go to work, and in the evening it's 6-7 o'clock at night. It could be 20 minutes. It could be an hour. I never set like mandatory time. If I grab my gun and things aren't flowing, I stop, because I do not want to imprint bad habits. I only imprint good. So if I'm doing something, it's feast or famine. If I'm doing something and it's clicking, I'll do it for an hour straight. If I'm doing something and it's not, I'll try something else. And if that's not working, I stop. A lot of people feel like, oh, I have to dry fire. No, you don't. It's worse to dry fire bad habits than it is to reinforce, good habits. And so that's truly how I go about it. And I just do that week in, over and over. And I start with the small things and the base fundamentals, and I attack them till they become second nature, and I no longer see that problem in my match videos. And then I add the next thing, and I attack that thing, and I just chip away to where now I'm at the point where I'm getting ultra technical with stuff where most shooters aren't going to think about it or see it. And I focus on the stupid little things to most people, but it's a 10th here, 10th there. It adds up over the length of a match, so that's kind of where it's micro tuning, we'll just say. But
and then you just so once you have all that data from your video, all that data from your dry fire, you take that into live fire and you just confirm what you're doing in dry fire. Is that about right?
Yeah, and that's where the performance journal comes in. We'll just call it a performance journal. It's not a diary, it's a journal.
It's not a shooting diary.
Manny Basham, there you go, buddy. It's a journal, performance journal, performance analysis. It's not a diary. So I record everything in there, and then typically I try to live fire once a week. A lot of it depends on my schedule, but right now it's 115 in Vegas, but I still get my live fire in. And what I do there is, I go and I confirm the things I was focused on or working on, and then that leads into the match, and the process just repeats itself. I don't waste ammo. 40's not cheap, and I'm testing a bunch of different companies' ammo loads right now, and for me, it's like I'm all about quality, not quantity. So I'll put like 150 rounds, 200 at most, in my bag, and that's it. When I go and I set up a micro stage, and you guys have probably seen some of them on my social, and that's my focus. Um, Sometimes it's just an isolation day. I'll have an issue with trigger and or shot calling, whatever it may be, depending on that week. And I go, and that's my focus, and I get in and I get quality. And once the quality slips, I stop. I do not, with live fire and dry fire, do not reinforce bad habit at all. I only imprint success. And if I don't have that and I change it, and if it still doesn't work, I stop. I don't beat dead horses. But it seems to work so far for me for only being competing for a year where I'm at. So
That's good. Yeah, I agree. I don't like doing real high round count live fire because, you know, I'm like you, I'm kind of ADD and I'll work on things for a while. And then after a while, like after a couple hundred rounds, really you like mentally you're kind of done. And then it just becomes like you're just, well, what am I going to do now? Well, I can work on, then you kind of start working on weird stuff like, oh, I'm working on load of starts or just, then you're just kind of shooting. So I like your focus. I didn't realize like how, I guess the intensity of your focus. But like you said, with your background, that makes a lot of sense. Um, that's great, man. I think that'd be good for a lot of people to hear because, I recently just started doing daily dry fire. Before that, I used to make a lot of excuses. Oh, I'll just dry fire a couple times, and it really it showed in my match performance. I would shoot really terrible. Um, when I came back from vacation a couple weeks ago, I decided, you know what, I got a couple matches coming up. I'm going to dry fire every single day, and I could just from dry firing every single day, not even doing probably like one live fire session a week, I saw huge improvements. So I think that attributes a lot to that. So I guess we can kind of segue. We can talk about let's talk about sponsorship. So you have sponsors and you're not part of a team, you're an independent shooter. So why don't you kind of talk about that process of, finding the sponsors? Because I know a lot of people, want to know about that. Um, that's like a big thing in the shooting sports is having sponsors. So why don't you kind of talk about your journey through that?
yeah, well, and for me, I think a lot of people want sponsors, but they don't want to do the work. So that'll kind of lead into what I'm about to say. Um,
Yeah.
for me, I had sponsorship deals, we'll call them influencer ambassadorship deals, before I ever started shooting competition. Um, so that really what I started into. By the time I started shooting competition, I already had a full ammo sponsor, holster sponsor, gear sponsor, and it solely came from marketing. A little bit more about my background. I'm an entrepreneur. I've owned my own gun shops, FFLs, retail stores, built multiple businesses. And so marketing and sales is kind of my actual bread and butter. So for when a lot of people look at sponsorship, I think the biggest problem they have is they just want free stuff. Um, it's got
Yeah.
to be a 50-50 split. They have to have return. So as an independent sponsored shooter, we'll just say that I have to show value, you have to have positive ROI for a company to find you attractive. Now, we'll talk about the biggest one right now. I'm dealing with Atlas Gunworks. Now, a lot of people, when I started with Atlas, are like, whoa, like, that's a big deal. And for me, that was like the big one that I was, going after. And a lot of people assume when trying to get sponsorship that you have to be like some world renowned shooter. I'm not. I'm only a year into competition, but you also have to understand they're a business. So how can you make them money is the way that I look at it. And how can you be a good ambassador for their company and promoter for their company? Because in the end, that's their company. They need to grow. And so that's the way that I look at it, at getting sponsorships. Pretty much all my sponsors have approached me. I don't go after companies like crazy. I kind of just do my thing and I let word of mouth get around, and I turn down a lot more than I accept just due to time. And I want to make sure the companies I'm currently working with, that I'm giving them my full attention. But that's a little bit about it. It's really, a lot of it falls back to, how many tools are in your belt. If you're someone out there listening and you want to be sponsored, what makes you different than the next person on that team or one of the other shooters? Because there's thousands of us, that shoot competition. And for me, within my marketing background, but also my social media and my presence and, my willingness to sell product and promote is what separated. Because there's a lot of shooters. There's a lot of great shooters. But how many of them are going to, take the time to do the promotional side and can show the knowledge behind promotion? So I feel like if someone, you can add a lot of value by understanding marketing and promotion. And so that's where you get more like you're an affiliate, ambassador, influencer type. But that's really what companies, I feel like they need, because you understand how to navigate people, how to sell product, how to communicate their product properly and do them justice. That way they're not just giving out free stuff and getting nothing in return. And that's kind of the way that I've approached this whole thing.
Yeah. So making yourself marketable, like you
Yeah.
don't like you don't want to be a money hole for them. Like they don't like for Atlas, like they could have easily just sponsored you. You could just shot the gun. But I got like on your social media, you do a you do a great job of promoting your companies. And I think it's true to what you said about picking companies that produce like quality products. Cause you'll go to some matches and so there will be some guys that are trying to push some questionable companies or companies that don't really have a good track record. So I think if you're out there looking for a sponsorship, just be careful because, you don't want to endorse, like you don't want to attach your name to something that you don't believe in.
One, it's a small community and we all talk and everybody knows everyone, it gets around. And so, for me, I've been offered some really good deals, and I've turned them down just based on belief in a product. The way I look at it is if a company contacts me, I say, would I promote this product without a sponsorship? And if I can't say that I would, then I typically don't do a deal with them. And I have companies send me products and I send them right back. If I don't believe in a product or if I don't think it's quality, I tell them. And that's why I won't work with them. So for me, it's about building loyalty with your fan base as far as an affiliate or ambassador, whatever you want to call it. So to where when I say, hey, this is good, my thousands of followers that see me, they take my word because they know they can trust me based on other products that I've promoted and pushed. If it's a piece of crap, I mean, based on my past before I got into competition, I would flat out say, hey, this is a piece of crap. Like yeah. I hold back a little more. I'm a little more, I don't want to say proper, but it builds that with the customer to where they know, hey, he wouldn't shoot it if he didn't believe in it. And honestly, Atlas, running an apparel, it's a lot about the people for me. I'm big on, I've had other gun companies contact me, but I love dealing with Atlas because customer service. I used to own my own gun shop. I've had the whole retail side. I've built online, built .coms. I've done all that. And I understand customer service and customer satisfaction. And I've been on their end. And so I want that same for, potential customers. If I don't want to tell a customer, hey, you need to buy this, and then them go get treated like crap from a company. I want to know that the companies I'm working with and promoting have the best interest. And to me, Atlas by far goes like way above and beyond with, how they treat their customers, their response to customers, just their whole process is top notch. And same thing with Running Gun, same thing with Aim Cam, Green Ogre Gear. A lot of the companies that I do promotion and work with, that's the biggest thing for me is like who's behind, that website, who's behind the phone, who's actually giving a crap, because there's so many companies now and I don't like people to get treated like garbage and I don't want to promote that. So that's really what helps me, because I get asked all the time, what are you doing with this company or what are you doing with that company? A lot of it's based on the people behind the scenes. And I feel like I would want to work with them. I would want to work for them.
That's great. I like that. I like that a lot. So before we jump out here, why don't you kind of talk about some of your goals for 2019? I know we're about halfway through the season. We got some majors that are coming up, some big majors like nationals, things like that. So why don't you talk a little bit about your goals for the remainder of this season?
Yeah, so my goal right now, I'm going to continue with single stack and see it out through the end of the year. I'm getting pushed back to limited, and people want me to shoot open, which you might see me in open next year. We'll see how single stack fares out. But
I can't wait to see that.
Yeah, I figure I'm young and athletic. I should take advantage of it because I can shoot single stack when I'm old. But single stack is my primary focus. I feel like I'm just now settling in. I know it's halfway through the year, but my equipment's running, everything's smooth. I'm finally getting my timing down. So I'm even more motivated. I took second place at a major by less than 1%, and nothing's like giving me more drive. I got home at midnight and dry fired from that match after driving all night. So I really want to continue with that. I've got Utah State coming. We got High Desert, Area 2, Nationals. I'm in all those. So I'm really trying to hunker down and just continue to push the way I have been and see, by Nationals, it's in November, where I fare and, how I compare to the rest of the field. And that'll really determine what I do next year and if I continue, if I try other divisions. But it's just the continued focus and drive for me is my goal. I haven't really set, I have with some of the stuff, but there's so many variables. And being my first year, I've only shot in my career I just shot my second major ever. So I'm kind of new to the process of it. So I can't say, hey, I want to place this or that. I know where certain shooters stand, and I set targets on, where I should be. And so that's kind of what I'm basing it off for me is, how I compare against the rest of the field. But I'm excited about it. Either way, it's still drive for me, no matter what place I place. My wife's like, you wouldn't be happy if you took first. I'm like, you're right. Like, unless you win by 20%, you're not satisfied. And I said, well, that's why I've been successful at everything I've attempted is because I'm not satisfied. People are happy to take second place. Me, it's like, if you're not first or last, and you're the first loser when you take second place. So I got to try even harder and train even more so that doesn't happen again. And that's kind of what I've put into it.
That's great, man. Like I'll be definitely checking out your scores and things like that for nationals. This is your first nationals, right? That you'll be going to.
Yeah, this is my first everything. I just shot my first area match. This will be my first nationals, and I'm enjoying the process and the journey. And I've stopped looking at like outcome based. I'm really focusing on like living in the moment of the process and kind of try to take it in because in the past I wasn't, and it's just making it that much more fun. And I shoot a lot better when I just really soak in, more of the moment. And so for nationals, for me, I don't know what to expect. So I'm not putting crazy expectations on myself or pressure.
Right.
I want to go and shoot to my top performance and really see, where I'm at. And, I'm not looking at classification. I'm not looking at, because I get that all the time. Oh, you're not GM or you're not this, you're not that. And I really don't care about any of that. I just want to see where I stand against the field. And see how things fare. And so that's kind of where I'm at with that as a goal. And then obviously a big goal for me is to continue to satisfy all my commitments with my sponsors, continue to make them money, to continue to properly promote them and get their businesses out there and help grow with research and development and, be able to sign those contracts for 2020 and keep pushing. So those are my main priorities right now.
That's great, man. Well, good luck on your goals, man. Like you're a very driven person, and I just wish you the best of luck, man. I wish more people were like you, but I guess if more people were like you, the sport would be a little bit more difficult. Why don't you go ahead and plug your social media so that way people can follow you? That way they can follow your journey and check you out on social media.
Yeah. So my main social is actually Instagram, and I'm at Bulletsandbeards. It's one word. Bullets, A-N-D, Beards, and then Facebook, it's Mike Stoker, competitive shooter. Those are the only two that I really use. I might do a YouTube, but for now, that's my main thing. You can contact me. I'm very responsive. You send me a DM, I'm going to respond to it, unless it's some crazy trying to sell me something. I respond to pretty much everything. So, yeah, you can hit me up there. And if you want to come train or shoot together, I'm in Vegas. There's a good reason to come to Vegas.
Right.
Practice.
Awesome. Well, if I'm ever in the area, man, I'll definitely hit you up. And I would like to try to go shoot in the future a match somewhere that's not in Texas, like out of state somewhere. So if I'm ever out there in Vegas, I'll definitely hit you up, man. That'd be great. Even if we can't shoot a match, just go and train. If there's anything else, so let me do my little plug. So if you guys make sure you guys go to Facebook and search Shoot, Reload, Repeat Podcast. Like the Facebook page. I post a lot of stuff on there. You can follow me on Instagram at PracticalAsBuck. That's all we have for you. Is there anything you want to add before we end this thing?
No, I'm good. About all I got. Thank you.
Well, I thank you, Mike, for big time difference. We had to kind of schedule that, but I appreciate you being on the show, man. I've been trying to find shooters that are driven and that are, better shooters than me to get on the podcast. So that way I can kind of, spread y'all's message. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure that you leave us a 5-star review. Make sure you subscribe and shoot fast and don't suck.